you're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's top stories. The United States delivers military aid worth $50 million to the Lebanese army to help improve efforts to combat militant threats. More than 2 million people in Syria's Aleppo are in danger of coming under total siege, the United Nations warns, calling for immediate access to the heavily bombed city. And Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan jets into Russia for his first meeting with counterpart Vladimir Putin since the two strongman leaders began healing a bitter feud over Ankara's downing of a Russian warplane. The telecoms file will not be addressed during cabinet meeting because Premier Tamam Salam has asked Telecommunication Minister Boutros Harib to complete the file and return it back to the cabinet in a month for discussions. The sources closest to the Premier assure that the file has not been overlooked as alleged by some, and added that Harib, who is currently outside the country, will present on time an integrated report as requested. Conflicts are lingering between Harib on one hand and Foreign Minister Jabran Basil on the other, as well as Education Minister Ilyas Bousab on the others, over what reports said is linked to personal gains over the telecom file. Now, in the Sarai, the telecommunications sector file, as cabinet meets, are demanding to replace Ojero Telecom chief Abdul Mehman Yusuf over corruption claims consumed much of the cabinet session. Discussions were supposed to tackle renewing the contracts of two mobile service providers and the file of the illegal internet supply network that was uncovered in March. In other Lebanese news, the United Nations delivered military aid worth $50 million to the Lebanese army this morning to help improve its efforts to combat militant threats. The military equipment included 50 armored vehicles, 40 artillery launchers, and 50 grenade launchers. During the delivery at the port of Beirut, U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon Elizabeth Richard said that the equipment was part of the aid package amounting to $220 million this year. Richard said the aid makes Lebanon the fifth largest recipient of American military assistance. According to the U.S. Embassy, Washington had presented Lebanon with security aid worth $1.4 billion since 2005. Over the past years, military assistance has included Huey-2 helicopters, Hellfire missiles, border surveillance equipment, as well as ammunition. Lebanon has been facing security threats since the crisis in Syria erupted in 2011. More than 2 million people in Syria's Aleppo are in danger of coming under total siege, the United Nations is warning, calling for immediate access to the heavily bombed city. Ferocious fighting has rocked divided Aleppo in recent weeks, with rebels and regime forces seizing rival access routes and cutting off residents. In a statement, the UN's top humanitarian official in Syria, Yaqub El-Hilo, and regional coordinator Kevin Kennedy called for a humanitarian pause in the hostilities. 2 million people in the city are living in fear of besiegement, including up to 275,000 people trapped in East Aleppo. The fighting in Aleppo is reported to have killed at least 130 civilians since the end of July and has damaged hospitals, clinics, and the city's power and water networks. More than 290,000 people have been killed since Syria's conflict erupted in March of 2011. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan jetted into Russia for his first meeting with his counterpart Vladimir Putin since the two strongman leaders began healing a bitter feud over Ankara's downing of a Russian warplane. Erdogan's visit to Putin's hometown of St. Petersburg is also his first foreign trip since the failed coup against him last month that sparked a purge of opponents and cast a shadow over Turkey's relations with the West. The shooting down of a Russian fighter jet by a Turkish F-16 over the Syrian border last November saw a furious Putin slap economic sanctions on Turkey and launch a blistering war of words with Erdogan that seemed to irrevocably damage burgeoning ties. But in late June, Putin surprisingly accepted a letter expressing regret over the incident from Erdogan as an apology and quickly rolled back a ban on the sale of package holidays to Turkey and signaled Moscow would end measures against Turkish food imports and construction firms. Coming up next, the United States condemns the suicide bomb attack on a hospital in Quetta, Pakistan. Stay with us. We'll be right back. English newscast on Future Television. The United States is condemning the suicide bomb attack on a hospital in Quetta, Pakistan that killed at least 70 people as a crowd gathered to mourn the earlier killing of a prominent lawyer. Quetta city still mourning, with roads deserted and markets shuttered a day after one of the worst incidents of violence in the volatile region of Pakistan. Jamaat-ul-Ahrar, a faction of the Islamist militant Pakistani Taliban group, earlier said it had carried out the attack. The movement at one time swore fealty to Islamic State Middle East leadership, but later switched back to the Taliban. The attack was the deadliest in Pakistan since an Easter Day bombing ripped through a Lahore park, killing at least 72 people.
The United States condemns in the strongest terms the terrorist attacks today in Quetta, including the murder of Bilal Anwar Qasi, president of the Baluchistan Bar Association, and the bombing at the civil hospital that killed dozens of Pakistanis and wounded many others. We send our deepest condolences to the loved ones of those killed and injured, and we offer our assistance to Prime Minister Sharif as his government investigates and works to bring these murderers to justice. These terrorists targeted a hospital, the judiciary, and the media, the most important pillars of democracy. These brutal and senseless attacks only deepen our shared resolve to defeat terrorism around the world. We'll continue to work with our partners in Pakistan and across the region to combat this threat.
Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump proposed a cutting tax for corporations and renegotiating the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement when he outlined his economic plans in Detroit in a speech that was repeatedly interrupted by protesters. The proposals were part of an effort to regain momentum lost during a damaging spate of controversy since the RNC named him the nominee last month.
All of our policies should be geared toward keeping jobs and wealth inside of the United States. Under my plan, no American company will pay more than 15% of their business income in taxes. In other words, we're reducing your taxes from 35% to 15%. Without security, there can be no prosperity. Just imagine how many more automobile jobs will be lost if the TPP is actually approved. It will be catastrophic. That's why I have announced we will withdraw from the deal before that can ever happen.
At a rally in St. Petersburg, Florida, Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton said she would raise taxes on the wealthy, unlike Donald Trump, whose tax plans she claims would give tax breaks to the wealthy. She was addressing the rally in St. Petersburg just hours after Trump addressed the Detroit Economic Club, where he proposed the tax breaks. Take a look.
So today in Detroit, he's got, I don't know, a dozen or so economic advisors he just named, hedge fund guys, billionaire guys, 6 guys named Steve, apparently. And so they wrote him a speech and he delivered it in Detroit. Now, they tried to make his old, tired ideas sound new. But here's what we all know, because we heard it again. His tax plans will give super big tax breaks to large corporations and the really wealthy, just like him and the guys who wrote the speech, right? Trickle-down economics does not help our economy grow. It does not help the vast majority of Americans, but it does really well for people already at the top. Well, we're going to turn that upside down. We're going to make the wealthy pay their fair share in taxes for a change. And I have said throughout this campaign, I am not going to raise taxes on the middle class, but with your help, we are going to raise it on the wealthy, because that's where the money is.
New Disney film Pete's Dragon held its world premiere at the El Capitan Theater on Hollywood Boulevard. The film is a remake of the 1977 film of the same name, but instead of featuring a two-dimensional cartoon dragon, the updated version features a realistic green-furred CGI creation. The story of the original has also changed. This time, Pete, who is orphaned and living in an expensive forest after a car crash, spends his days with Elliot, the friendly dragon who rescues him. Pete's Dragon stars screen legend Robert Redford and Bryce Dallas Howard. Here's a first look.
You don't have to run anymore, Pete. You can stay with us.
This thing is dangerous.
I don't want to leave you, but they'll come looking for you. What's going to happen to Elliot?
You have no idea what this thing is capable of. Let's go hunting.
You're very brave. Did you know that? You might be the bravest boy I've ever met.
This was about a chance to return to my own childhood experience and remember times when I was a kid, how I loved stories that were fantasy. I loved stories that were about adventure. I loved stories that had magic in them. And then you grow out of that as you get older and you miss it. So this was a chance to have a film, play a role in a film that allowed me to step back into that time.
How did you do this? I know, like, me thinking about meeting him and stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, it's Robert Redford. I mean, and everyone, I think, is probably like that. And he's just the chillest guy, and he's just so cool, and like he's very unassuming, you know, and warm and funny, and so it's like I got myself all worked up in meeting him, and then after I had spent time with him, I'm like, oh, he's like, you know, he kind of felt like my dad. The message, the underlying message with this film is just kind of to honor the planet and to protect the planet and to protect the creatures on this planet. And you know, it's not done in any kind of a didactic way, and it's, you know, it's subtle, but I think it's a powerful example of the beauty of nature and the worthiness of our protection of it.
If we keep cutting down trees, if we keep cutting things away, taking things away, pretty soon there will be nothing left to take away. There will be no planet. And so there's a sub-theme there that says, how far do we go when we develop? How far do we go in order to preserve what we've got? And I think the film illustrates the value of something like a forest. It values something like a storytelling. It values something like an animal in the forest that no one believes exists. I think those are very important things in this day and age, because we've become pretty cynical. You know, it's pretty dark times we're living in. You know, word travels in this town. How long has he been out there?
6 years.
You don't survive in a forest for 6 years alone. Eyes are always wide open. I'm always looking at what's beyond or behind what I'm looking at. And I love using my imagination. I exercise that, because that's what storytelling's about. And I love storytelling because I think we're bred on storytelling.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. The United States delivers military aid worth $50 million to the Lebanese army to help improve its efforts to combat militant threats. More than 2 million people in Syria's Aleppo are in danger of coming under total siege, the United Nations warns, calling for immediate access to the heavily bombed city. And Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan jets into Russia for his first meeting with counterpart Vladimir Putin since the two healed a bitter feud over Ankara's downing of a Russian warplane. Those are your Tuesday headlines live on Future Television. Stay up. Thanks for Serge Berberi with the French news. Have a good one.